Good morning, Groves Church. Hope you're doing well. We're in our second sermon of our Raising Faith series, which is very exciting. And today we're looking at having faith in the wilderness. This is Moses and the story of the Israelites as they leave Egypt and get to the Red Sea. And it's something that often sort of gets slightly skimmed over. I imagine if Exodus, the plagues and all of that, that's Exodus part 1, then Netflix would sort of call this Exodus part 2. It's the next bit of the story before they get into the wilderness wandering later on. And we've got 3 things to think about this morning, and they are wandering in God's wisdom, lamenting in God's presence, and stillness in God's deliverance. Okay, and that's how we're going to pull this text apart and explore what God has for us today. So let's start then with wandering in God's wisdom. And this is chapter 13, verse 17 through to chapter 14, verse 4. And as I get there, let me just start with a story. Now, back when Katie and I were courting, which is some years ago now, I went to visit her at her parents' in Southampton, and we decided to go on a day trip to the New Forest. I'd been there as a kid, had some holidays there, some good memories of it, beautiful place, and we thought, let's go for like a sort of late afternoon, 2-hour sort of summer evening stroll. And so we went and we did that, and we were walking along and wow, isn't this beautiful? And sort of the sun starting to go down, it looks really nice. You see some wild ponies in the heathland, you're like, wow. And we just continue to explore. And as we explore, I start to look around and I think, yeah, I'm not quite sure where we are now. I don't know if have you ever had that sense of like, well, I thought I knew where I was, and now I'm looking around, I'm like, I'm not sure I know where I am at all, actually. And that's what happened. And so we sort of continue on, and now we've got past the sort of jaunty 2-hour mark, and it's getting towards the 3-4 hour mark. And I'm thinking at this point, right, well, we're now getting into a real bog. My trousers are wet. The bracken's got higher. We're really starting to having to wade our way through here. I think we've definitely taken a wrong turn somewhere. Plus, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, the sun's going down. I do not want to be out here in the dark. And the car park said it closed at 8. And so we've got about half an hour to find the car. And Katie looks at me at this point. She's like, we're all right, aren't we? I'm like, yeah, we're fine. Thinking I've got to impress her. Like, I want her to think that I could be a husband who could take her on a walk safely. But in my mind, I'm freaking out. I'm like, we're going to die. Anyway, compose myself. We continue forward on this journey, this adventure, and we see some lights off in the distance. I'm thinking, right, okay, cool, we've got some lights. Head for the lights. So we're wading through, and we get to this hotel. And then, like 2 robbers, we climb over the back fence of their garden, and we walk through their garden like we were always supposed to be there, round the side of this hotel to the front, and we find the road, the beautiful, glorious road. But then I look at this road and I just look left and I look right and think, it's dark. I don't know which way to go. My internal compass, which clearly has served us brilliantly up to this point, says go right. So I think, okay, let's just go with it. Our car park is that way. And so we head off that way. And as we go, I'm just saying to God, please can you help us out? Really need your help right now. And just felt this whisper on my heart. Like God said, just stop the next car. And as he said that, I heard behind me, coming around the corner in the distance, a car. And I turn and I see some headlights. Weird. And I think, okay, I'll stop the car. So I flag the car down. And then as the car stops, I go towards it thinking, now what do I say? Like, hi, God told me to stop your car. Like, that's weird, right? So I'm thinking, what do? I end up saying hello, because I think that's a good way to go. And as I'm bending down to say hello, looking in through the window, on the side of the car, there is a big New Forest like management logo, and this is a guy who works for the New Forest, and I couldn't believe it. And so I explained our situation, explained we got lost, and that at 5 to 8 I was pretty sure our car was about to get locked in a car park and we would be sleeping in our car for the night. And he said, well, it's lucky you stopped me, because I'm the guy who locks up all the car parks, and I was just on my way to lock them up. And I was like, that's incredible. And he said, so I won't lock up your car, don't worry. I'll make sure it's gone before I lock it up. And from what you've described, the car park you want is just down there. It's about 10, 15-minute walk. Just head down this road. You'll get there. You'll find your car. He was just very sorry he couldn't give us a lift, but he only had one seat. But that's fine. We weren't bothered at all. We went on our way, got to our car, got home. And I remember thinking in that moment, you know, we were lost. And at some points I was genuinely thinking like, God, why have you let this happen? How, you know, we're in danger territory here. This is serious. Why have you allowed this? And I remember walking away thinking, actually, you knew exactly what you were doing. And that experience cemented in me this trust that God knows my steps and he knows what's going to happen, and he has a plan. And so that whole thing was a huge faith building exercise for me. You know, that my best was like, okay, I might have to, you know, sleep with soggy trousers in the back of my car. And God's best was like, no, I'm going to build your faith and get you home so you can sleep in a bed. With this in mind, this idea that God has this bigger picture, let's turn our attention to the Israelites. Because in our story, the Israelites have just been delivered from Egypt through this mighty work of God. The Egypt are the ancient world's superpower, okay? And so this is a ridiculous deliverance, this tiny little nation being delivered from this massive superpower. And so you can imagine the Israelites are on a high, right? They're like, whoa, we're free. This is amazing. We're not slaves anymore. We can be, we can lead our own lives. We're not going to be whipped and told what to do. And this is incredible. And so you can imagine there's a bit of a party as they're heading out of Egypt. And I remember when I became a Christian, there was this sense of like, wow, I've just been delivered from, you know, sin and death and all this stuff into this whole new life. And the world looks different. And you think, oh, like it's got more colour and more excitement and more hope. And you're like, with Jesus, anything is possible. And there's this sort of celebration and joy that bubbles up in you. And then I remember as the weeks turned into months, there just started to be some difficult stuff. Things I wasn't expecting. The initial high fades, and I had friendships that got really difficult. Some friends who even sort of, you know, disowned me, walked away, weren't interested because, you know, I betrayed them by starting to follow Jesus. I started to develop some anxiety and fear, and things weren't as easy as they were before, and trying to pray and talk to Jesus felt a bit more cloudy and difficult, and these things just started cropping up. And I imagine for Israel, they had this similar experience of like they're on this high of leaving Egypt. They've been delivered into this whole new life. They're free people. And then as they're following the cloud of the presence of God who's leading them, and Moses who is leading them into this promised land, this new place where they're going to live and dwell, they think, right, we're heading on this road. And then all of a sudden, the most obvious road to take for them is turned away from. You know, the pillar moves in a different direction. Moses says, actually, we're going this way. And you can imagine at this point, they're like, well, why would we go that way? That doesn't make any sense. We should be heading that way, surely. But regardless, they are obedient and they follow Moses and the pillar into this desert region. They set up camp a couple of times, and they're going for a while, and then God says to Moses, I want you to tell Israel that they're turning back. And I can imagine at this point, as Moses, I would have been pretty miffed. I would have been like, what? We already turned away from the obvious road. They're already grumbling and a bit confused as to why things had started to get hard when it made sense to go that way, but fine. and I can imagine Moses going to Israel. It'd be that moment like when you have in the car when one of you says to the other, actually, we needed to turn left there. And you're like, no, we don't. No, it's definitely this way. It's down here. And then you carry on and about 20 minutes goes by and in your head you're like, yeah, it definitely was left there. I don't want to admit that. I'm just going to subtly turn off the road here. That's it. And just head round 4th exit on the roundabout. Whisper, sorry, to the person next to me. Head back on the road and eventually take the right turning. That's what it feels like. Moses is like, yeah, so guys, we're going to head back. And you can imagine we'd bring like, what? We said it was that road. Why are we turning back? It just must have felt so demoralizing. And like, this is getting so hard and confusing. And then they're turning back. Not only is hard and demoralizing, but signals to Egypt, who are sort of looking out and seeing this, the Israelites leave. It signals to them, hang on, they're in complete confusion. And so Pharaoh musters his army and they go out because they're like, hang on, they don't know what they're doing. Let's get our slaves back. And so Israel at this point are thinking, right, we should have taken that road. Now we've had to turn around. And the fact we've turned around has just summoned an army to come and get us. What is going on here? And verse 10 says, as Pharaoh approached, the Israelites looked up and the Egyptians were marching after them. And so the army's coming towards them and they're thinking, right, skedaddle. And so they get going. And where do they end up? In front of a massive body of water. That Moses and the presence of God, the pillar of fire, the pillar of cloud, has led them now to a huge body of water. So they are literally stuck. They've got an impassable body of water on one side and a marauding Egyptian army on the other. And they must have been thinking to themselves, well, hang on a minute, we've been faithful. We've followed the pillar of cloud and fire. We've followed our leader Moses faithfully and obediently, and we have ended up in a place where we are definitely going to die. It looks impossible. But many of us know the story of what happens next. God in that moment, he turns up. He protects them from the Egyptian army. He sends a wind to part the sea. The Israelites, they leave through the sea. They're delivered to freedom and the sea crashes down upon Pharaoh's armies. God knew exactly what he was doing the whole time. I had a friend who once said that his greatest spiritual gift was the gift of hindsight. And we can laugh, but actually it's only as the author of Exodus looks back that he can see with new eyes the wisdom of God on display. That he can write, actually, we took that not obvious route rather than the straightforward road through Philistine country because God, our Father, he knew that if we got into a battle, we wouldn't survive it. It would either be too demoralizing or would be too torn apart, and God wouldn't get the people that he just delivered from Egypt and wanted for himself. He loved them too much to let them go that way. It would have destroyed them. He didn't want that for them, so he turns them off the obvious route. Then he turns them around because he wants to arouse Pharaoh's pride so that when they get to the Red Sea, and they got this impassable body of water on one side and the marauding Egyptian army on the other, that they could see his power at work, that he is the God who will deliver them. Like my moment in the New Forest, where I thought, you are the God who knew exactly what was going on, and you are the God who will look after me. It was a faith cementing moment. God is giving that to Israel, saying, I am the God who, when things seem impossible, will come through and make sure that you are okay. I know exactly what I am doing. So the whole time God knew that every step was in his plan. It was all part of his wisdom, all part of the big picture he was creating for Israel. And friends, God is working for our good in the moments when we feel like all I'm doing is wandering around right now and I don't know what's going on. Now, it is important that we ask the question, Actually, God, is this an attack of the enemy? Do I need to pray? Or have I wandered off, God, in a funny direction? Did the pillar of cloud go that way? And I was like, nah, see you later. I'm heading off this way. Has that happened? And we can ask those questions, but on the whole, actually, what God is doing is allowing us to wander in his wisdom. That he is building this big picture, and we need to trust him that we are exactly where he wants us to be, even if it makes no logical sense, and even if we end up in this place where we feel completely stuck. Like, why is there an army there, and why is there a body of water there? Like, I don't get it. We've got to trust that God can lead us to that place, and he has a reason for it, that he is working for our good. Now, I appreciate that even as I say that, some of you are going through incredibly painful and difficult circumstances, and it might even seem offensive for me to say, well, he's working for my good, when actually this just hurts me so much. And that's where I want to come on to my second point, which is lamenting in God's presence. Because what we see in this story is the pillar of cloud and the pillar of fire never ever left the Israelites. That God was present with his people the whole way through this ordeal. And we can say, can't we, well, just because we can look back and see that the situation worked out for the Israelites, it doesn't mean that it wasn't painful. It doesn't mean that there wouldn't have been fear and anger and confusion and anxiety as to what was going on as they were turning round and then being pursued. It all has a cost. And so there's this moment, isn't it, where they say, why are you doing this, God? Why are you doing this, Moses? Have you brought us out here to die? And that's quite a human response, quite a reasonable one. And so they cry out in the presence of God and in the presence of Moses. What's going on? And I think too long have we been robbed of our ability to tell God how we feel. And yet the Bible is full of it. We just told, no, faith is you just got to be okay with it. And I disagree. I disagree, because my Lord, my Jesus, I see him kneeling in the garden. And before his Father, he says, God, I don't want to do this. This hurts. This is going to cost me so much. But not my will, but your will be done. And then we have a whole book, the book of Psalms, which is full of the lament and the anguish of the human experience before God. Psalm 88 finishes with the psalmist saying, and darkness is my closest friend. That's how he's feeling in that moment. God, darkness seems a whole lot closer to me than you do right now. And perhaps the Israelites were feeling just like that as they were going back and forth and wandering around, and then suddenly they've got army and water, and they're like, God, what are you doing? And I just want to say, I think it is incredibly faith-filled to cry out to God. To lament is an exercise of faith, because you're crying out to him. This is not okay, God. God, I'm finding this situation so hard. Lord, being here right now, it makes me feel like you don't love me. How can you say that you love me and lead me here? It's hurting me. I want to say it is okay to lament in the presence of God, to cry out in confusion and anguish and anger. I want to encourage you to share your disappointment, your struggle, and perhaps the seemingly illogical route that God is currently leading you on. Don't hold it in, let it out, tell him. Because yes, God is absolutely building this bigger picture. His wisdom is beyond ours. He knows exactly what he's doing. But at the same time, he is the God who gets down in the dirt and looks us in the face and weeps every tear that we do. Cares deeply, listens to us, and will hear our cry. So lament in God's presence. And then finally, I want to come to stillness in God's deliverance. And this is looking at verses 13 to 31. So the Israelites are stuck. There's no clear way through, there's no clear way out. And they cry out to Moses, and then Moses stands and says, "Do not be afraid. Stand firm, and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still." Be still. We've got an army heading that way. Can't get over that water. And your advice to me right now, Moses, is be still. That must have been hard to take. I don't know whether you noticed, but in the text, Israel left Egypt armed for war. But God wasn't having that. He wasn't going to let them try and deliver themselves. And actually, as the Egyptians turn up, they're all terrified anyway, so it wouldn't have ended well. But regardless, and I think what can happen so often is we arrive in these difficult situations and we arm ourselves ready for battle. We take control. We're like, I'm going to deliver myself from this thing that I'm in. And so we think, like, what do? Oh, I'll build some defences. That's what I'll do. Or I'll order everyone around me, to go and do loads of stuff so we can look like we're really trying to deal with this situation that we're in. Or, I know, I'll just get this bucket and this spade and I'll turn round to this massive body of water and I'll just slowly dig out a trench that we can all get through. We're just desperate for control in situations that seem impossible. And it's kind of understandable, but actually our solutions are as ludicrous often as an Israelite taking a bucket of spade and trying to dig their way through the Red Sea to freedom. Because having faith in God isn't about everything around us and before us making sense. It's about seeing and believing that the God above the circumstance knows exactly what he is doing. So Moses says, stand firm. Stand firm then, friends, in his love. Stand firm under his mighty hand. And Israel do just that. And they witness God arrive in power. Puts a barrier between them and the armies of Egypt. Sends a wind to blow the sea away so the Israelites cross on dry land. And then as the Egyptians pursue them through that sea, the water returns. And Israel stand on the banks of freedom and see their oppressors destroyed. See, all this time, God is building to a moment not only where he cements their understanding of who he is, that he's the God who acts in human history to save and deliver and to show them that he loves them and that he's got every step covered even when it doesn't make sense. He is the God who's building to this moment where Israel can stand on the banks of the river, see their enemy destroyed and know that they are truly free. That those guys are never going to be oppressing them again. You know, they haven't snuck away down an easy route where Egypt have followed and they're, spending their whole life looking over their shoulder thinking, is there a sneaky Egyptian about to jump out on me? Am I really free? God's like, stand on this river and see that you are truly free, that your oppressors will never oppress you again. And so God says to us in our difficulties, be still. Don't just let go of control. Don't try and work this out. Trust me. which is incredibly hard to do when you're facing an army and an impassable body of water. But he says, trust me. And the reason he does that is because he wants you to truly see the destruction of the things that oppress you, the things that want to hold you back, the things that want to rob you of life, the things that want to control you and pull you away from the life that is offered to us in Jesus. So God does know what he's doing. And friends, there is a moment, isn't there, that seemed like the ultimate failure, where the wisdom of God is most greatly displayed, where God comes to earth to save the earth, and he does so as a peasant carpenter who does nothing remarkable for 30 years, then starts this sort of travelling homeless ministry, collects 12 ragamuffins who are a bit useless a lot of the time. And then he dies on a cross, and you think, how is this ever part of the plan? But actually, on the third day, he rises again. Death is conquered. Then the church is filled with the Holy Spirit. And suddenly, from one homeless carpenter, you have this worldwide movement called Christianity, who profess to have met the risen Jesus and be filled with his life and ever daily being transformed by him. It's a moment that didn't make any sense, and yet it had the ultimate power to free and to deliver and to transform. So friends, God knows what he's doing, even when it seems utterly hopeless and confusing. He has a plan. But keep talking to him in that, because he wants to hear it and wait for his deliverance. And so just quickly, practically, how do we stand firm each day? Well, there's something, and I have talked about it before, but Richard Foster's book, Celebration of Discipline, it's a brilliant book, and in it he talks about palms up, palms down. And I think this is a really practical and brilliant way to each day come and surrender the issue, the situation, the struggle, the stuckness to God. And so we come before God with our palms open, palms up like this, and we say, palms up, here is the thing, God. In your presence, here is the thing that I am finding hard. Here's the situation at work that seems impossible. Here's the person I'm really struggling with. Here's the illness that is making life so hard. Here's the relationship breakdown that is really hurting me. Whatever it is, you hold it out before God. Here's the addiction that I'm struggling with. Here's the thing that is oppressing me. Here's the anxiety that is crippling me. Whatever it is, you hold it out like this. Here's my stuck, God. And then when you know that you've held it out to him in his presence, you say palms down, and you turn your palms over. And this is your faith moment where you say, I'm now standing, God, and trusting that you have this, that you are good, that it is in your hands, that you know exactly what you're doing, even though I don't. And then you say palms up. And you say, God, and so I'm ready to receive your peace for today. And receive whatever you have for me in today. And you just do that every time, it rises again and you think, am I lost? Did I get it wrong? Are we in the right place? Why does this hurt so much? Whatever it is, and then you offer it back again. And you just keep doing that, just faithfully. That's our act of faith. That's our act of response in this. And God will work in that. He will honour that, and he will grow your faith and allow you to trust him, and you will see his deliverance in whatever you are facing. So friends, let's wander in God's wisdom and trust that he does know the way. Let's lament in his presence and trust that he does want to hear everything that we have to say as we cry out to him. And let's wait in stillness for his deliverance and trust that he is working all things out for our good, and he will deliver us. It might not be in the way that we expect. It might not be sending another army in to fight the army that's coming at us. It might not be sending a fleet of boats to cross the sea. It might in fact be that illogical third way that we didn't see coming, we never could have guessed, but was all the more beautiful and brought all the more freedom. And so let's put our hand in the hand of the one who knows exactly what he is doing and where he is going, and trust in him because he loves us.